Last week's German chocolate cake was a success. My sister Rue came and she enjoyed it immensely. We ended up going to Budapest for 3 days and it was a lot of fun. It was very hot. And because of the heat, we are going to do a much lighter recipe today at my husband's request using a peach. As I mentioned before, it is very hot everywhere, but especially where I'm at. And since it is so hot, we're going to do a small recipe for a picnic. My husband is one of the few people I know that actually subscribes to magazines anymore. He loves Cooks Illustrated. This is issue 201, and inside there is the Rustic peach cake. So to begin, it calls for 1/4 a cup of sugar and 1/8 a teaspoon of cinnamon. With that, you're supposed to combine it and then put it aside. You add 2 tablespoons of sugar. You take 2 tablespoons out of the mixture, and then you have to take 6 peach slices and roll it inside that 2 tablespoons of cinnamon sugar mixture and set that aside before you actually begin combining the cake. So this is a sample of what it is supposed to look like. It's on page 29. It serves 4 people, and we're gonna try it now. It's a very small cake. Just how small? Normally a cake is 9 inches. This cake is 6 inches. And I had to actually buy a very small pan to bake it in. So let's begin. We're going to assemble the cake. It calls for 2 bowls. In the first bowl, you have to add 1/2 a cup of flour, along with 1/2 a teaspoon of baking powder and 1/4 a teaspoon of salt. In the second bowl, you're to add 1/4 a cup of vegetable oil, 2 tablespoons of light brown sugar, 1 egg, 2 tablespoons of milk, and the rest of the cinnamon sugar mixture that I had spoken about before, which is 1/4 a cup of sugar and 1/8 a cup of cinnamon, ground cinnamon. Okay, so we have whisked our 2 bowls and now we have to combine them. Like I said, it's going to be a very small cake, and I don't think I've ever made such a small cake, so we'll just see how it turns out. If I can just keep it inside the bowl and off my apron, that's what you call winning. It's all mixed together, and now we're going to add it to our 6-inch pan. This has to go into a preheated oven, 350 degrees Fahrenheit. But before you put it in the oven, the peach slices that have been mixed with cinnamon and sugar have to be arranged into a pinwheel shape on top. Oh my gosh, this is really tiny. Let's see if there's even enough for 1 cake. Oh, goodness gracious. This is like 1 slice, it's 1 slice. It's not even like a whole cake, but whatever, we're gonna try it. Pinwheel shape, we're just gonna put it on there. Be careful when you pick your peaches, not to make sure that they're not too ripe, because then you could end up with a soggy cake, which, I don't know. If you like soggy cake, then good, but if you don't, then get a peach that is not quite ripe. Okay, let's get a shot of this. So that's as close as a pinwheel shape as I'm gonna get here, folks. I'm gonna put it in the oven for 30 to 35 minutes, but Maxine is always running hot. Let's just see how long it does take, how it's gonna taste, and as I always say, wish me luck. Welcome back to the Old Recipe Kitchen, where we do recipes by the book, or in today's instance, a magazine. Shout out to cooks. The rustic peach cake turned out pretty well. There are some tips that I didn't mention before. First tip is the remaining cinnamon sugar that's left over from the peaches can be sprinkled on top of the cake before you put it in the oven. Creates a nice crust on top. Make sure you also remember that halfway through the baking, so about 15-20 minutes in, you go in and you rotate the cake so that it is even throughout. It turned out really well. It is very small, but I am proud of it. It doesn't look too bad. It looks like what's in the book. Another thing I forgot to mention is the reason that this recipe calls for oil instead of butter is because the oil will make the cake lighter, because butter solidifies at room temperature. So that's one of the reasons why they wanted oil instead of butter in this cake. And also butter would make you have to use a mixer. So for such a small cake, there's no reason to use butter unless you prefer butter. Anyway, thank you for tuning in. Again, if you have any recipes that you want to see done here on the Old Recipe Kitchen, please comment down below. Give me a like and a subscribe. I appreciate it. Also, I'm looking for suggestions. If you have anything that calls for a recipe that calls for malted milk powder or poppy seeds, I have plenty of that. So I'm open to suggestion. Until next time, I'm Yvonne, and this is the Old Recipe Kitchen.